Thank you guys for joining us, and hopefully I can share some wisdom and experience that I've had throughout my life, and we could all grow together. Give you a little bit of a background. I live in Salt Lake right now, but I was actually born and raised in Los Angeles. I escaped during COVID. So my wife and I moved out here and we started a full-time project in real estate about a year ago. So my background prior to this point, I'll go into for a few minutes, but basically just so you know where I'm at right now has not even been a full year yet. So with the advice I can give, the experiences that I can share, I think it's a great value to show you how you can scale your business to start doing multiple deals per month and get to that sustainability that we all look for to become business owners and entrepreneurs. So that being said, background. I turned 40 in November. For my first portion of my adult life in my 20s, I was a paramedic. Specifically, I specialized in multi-casualty incidences, and then I moved eventually into the film industry. So my job was delegating and handling high, fast-paced, very, very high stress environments where I had to not only handle an entire team of people, but I also had to handle potential patients and casualties and whatnot. So when I moved into the film industry, I had anywhere from about 100 people underneath me that I had to basically maintain and babysit. And then that grew into what eventually became the hospitality industry. Long story short, I was in a motorcycle wreck in 2010, and I broke my back, my arms, my shoulders, everything. Some of you guys have heard this story, but I'll still share it. And I was out of work for 2 years. It took me away from being a paramedic. And in 2012, I was ready to start buying a house. And I got answers no across the board. And first of all, I hate that I took no as an answer. I know now that I probably should have, if someone mentioned seller finance to me, holy crap, man, that would have been a different world altogether. But I took no as an answer. They're like, well, you've been out of work for 2 years on disability. So you don't have any, you've got great credit, you've got great cash, but you don't have any work history. Why don't you go back to being a server? So I went back to the hospitality biz, and that's where I kind of existed for the past 10 years. I became a chef. I was actually on the TV show MasterChef, and I was always trying to grow, and eventually became, I'll just share this with you guys. When I was doing my chefing stuff and doing private chef, these are the things I love to create. And I ran kitchens and I ran teams, and again, delegated. I hired staff, eventually moved away from the kitchen, and I made my way into the wine scene. So I actually became a sommelier. Some of you guys might know what that is. Some maybe don't, but it's a very deductive way of looking at life. In other words, if you gave me a red glass of wine, I'm not sitting there, and just memorizing the way it tastes. It's a deductive process. I look at the hue of the red. I look for the aroma, the nose, and eventually through, a lot of practice and a lot of deduction, I can figure out exactly which wine, which grape, from which state, from which region of the world, and even down to which vineyard it is. And that's where I kind of came into real estate with that same mindset of deconstructing and breaking down the end result, and that bringing us to where we are today. So, like I said, moved here a year ago. I started here for the purpose of doing fix and flips. I had a little bit of background while I was in the restaurant biz. I helped out on the construction side. And I moved here with hopes that I was going to do a bunch of fix and flips in the Salt Lake area. And I learned very quickly that the competition was super fierce in this market. And over the past year, I've learned that Salt Lake is one of the top 5 markets, hands down, across the nation in terms of difficulty and being able to get into there and entry fees. There's companies out here that spend close to about $100,000 a month consistently on marketing alone. And so I hope to get there, but in the meantime, that's kind of where I shifted my strategy and I focused on scaling. So fast forward, when I first started doing the wholesaling thing and I learned about marketing and I learned about all that stuff, I got really distracted with creative finance. I'll admit it. It was a rabbit hole that I maybe shouldn't have gone down. But what it did was, in a good way, it slowed me down from trying to become a wholesaler, and it made me focus on becoming a systems guy. And some of you might know in Sub 2, I'm one of the systems people. I help out with the communication platform there and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed building out systems. In fact, I built out a CRM before I even spoke to a single seller. I was focused knowing that I wanted to be in a position. I wanted to build the dam before the water started flowing. Right. I wanted to make sure that I had systems in place and ready to go. And that's what led me to the partnership that I'm in now, which, it was like two peas in a pod, peas and carrots, where my partner was very, very visionary aspect. And if you really want to break down visionary and integrator, that's a way you can look at it. But he was very, he didn't care about making mistakes. He went out, he called sellers. He had no system in place whatsoever. And I had a great system in place. And together we scaled up very, very rapidly. So with, no further ado, this is kind of what I want to break down to you guys. So, in sub 2, they call it the conveyor belt. I'm going to break it down in regards to the assembly line. We all know about Henry Ford. What he's famous for is not quote unquote inventing the car, but he invented the assembly line to get you to the point to mass produce and replicate a process. And so with that being said, I want to start at the beginning portion right here. And I want to kind of just go over with what I've learned and the way that I've focused on this. And just so you guys know, like last week, we locked up 7 contracts. We had 3 closed this week. I can show you everything for that being the case. But right now, I just kind of want to get into the details of, how to get to that point, I guess the best way to put it. So beginning of the conveyor belt, guys, or the beginning of the assembly line. And again, remember, what's the point of an assembly line? Putting a specific person into a specific position that specializes in that seat, right? That's what we want to do, guys. That's exactly where we want to be. Do you think Elon Musk is dealing with bookkeeping? Absolutely not. No way. He's got people in place to do that so he can focus on bigger and better things. So the first portion of this assembly line, I'm calling the selective prospecting. Now, this is not necessarily part of the assembly line, but it's you, the owner, or you, the manager. This is where you're going to be making your major marketing choice. Meso markets is going to be more city, and micro markets is going to be more neighborhood. All right. What I want to do, I want to get into a little more focus on the meso aspect of this. So we're going to focus on specific cities. Okay. You can focus on a number of cities, but to scale out the fastest, this is where you want to focus on this. Okay. So, and I'll explain why. Speaking about macro real quick, macro can be done in 3 major ways of looking at it. Google PPC, Facebook ads, and finally SEO. This is something that's, I will say right now, I focused on SEO in the beginning. Like I said, I built out my systems. I've spent over $30,000 on my website. And it's finally paying off 9 months later. Right. I'm finally getting leads that are coming in from across the nation. And that makes me feel good. Now, have I closed a deal from that SEO? No, I haven't. Now, I'll be fully transparent. Have not closed a deal from SEO yet, but I know as soon as I do close a deal, it will have paid off that investment. So I'm very happy with finally seeing some results and some traction. But what SEO is very important for is going to be that Google PPC. Okay. And again, I'm going to touch on this really basically, but with a PPC ad, you can focus on a micro market, right? Where you can focus on a neighborhood, but guess what? You're also paying around $300 per click, right? It's very, very expensive. When I say macro market, meaning across an entire state or across an entire country, we're looking at like the top 1,000 cities, like the top 1,000 areas of population. And that's where the SEO comes into play, where just so you guys have an idea, if you ever want to focus on the internet side of things, if my website versus your website, my website has SEO behind it that holds it, that has, backlinks, references from other websites and stuff like that. If your website and my website go head to head on who's going to get that ad clicked on from Google PPC, I'm going to win every time and I'm going to pay less than you will. So that's something to always think about, that if you are going to be trying to get into PPC, if you have no SEO, you either need to be able to spend a lot of money, $300 plus per click that go. I mean, imagine this. Imagine some idiot clicks on your page. That's a $300 charge, right? Like you have to pay $300 for somebody clicking on your page. Now, on the other hand, if you were to spread that out across the entire nation, that click now goes down from 300 down to 150. And depending on your SEO, you now are able to focus on it being even less than that, $60, $70, $80, sometimes even less than that, depending on the market. But again, I just wanted to kind of briefly touch on this, that in terms of a macro marketing scale, this is what you want to focus on. And right now, I don't want us to go down this road together. I want us to focus again on the meso market. Okay. But real quick, before I move on, we want to talk about micro markets, neighborhood, bandit signs, driving for dollars, door knocking. Now, the question is this advantageous to you who wants to scale? And the answer to that is I say, no, it's not. If you want to be a solopreneur, if you want to be the only person running your business, this is great because you have your finger on the pulse with that neighborhood. You get to know what those leads are looking like. You could look at a lead and just knowing the types of development in that area, you can know right away the ARV and the comps and just go from there. It's a very fast way of doing acquisition is learning those neighborhoods. But again, if you're looking to scale out, you're going to have to do multiple neighborhoods, if not multiple cities. So again, bandit signs, driving for dollars, and door knocking, these are things that you should focus on a individual scale, or if down the road you hire somebody to do this for you. And that's something you have to think about as well, is getting some 18-year-old kid at minimum wage and having them put bandit signs on every corner, or driving for dollars, or door knocking, whatever it is. So again, this is just a brief touch on this, but again, I want to get into cold calling, SMS, ringless voicemail, et cetera. So once you decide how you want to market, it goes to the lead generation. How are you going to get those leads into your pipeline? And with bandit signs, driving for dollars, door knocking, Google PPC, Facebook ads, and even SEO, that skips the entire lead generation portion altogether. And that moves in directly into the follow-up, which I'll get into. But right now with the lead generation, it comes down to hiring a virtual assistant. And I'm going to go into the different styles of virtual assistants, and I'm going to explain to you why. Again, we're talking about scaling. We are talking about what your goal here is to remove as many hats as possible and fill those seats with people that are specific for that discipline, and they specialize in that. Okay, so what I'm talking about right now is turnkey systems. Okay, I use Prime VAs. So prime-virtualassistantsolutions.com. Full transparency, I like working with them and I want to see them grow. So I'm definitely going to pump them out there. But I'm also going to mention Hourglass VAs. I'm going to mention Start Virtual, which a lot of us are aware of. And I'm even going to mention Virtual Squad. All of these are turnkey systems. Hourglass and Virtual Squad, for example, they like to focus on REI Sift. Okay, so I'm not going to go into deep detail about REI Sift, but in other words, list stacking, which means that you're getting two separate lists. Maybe one is going to be code violations, and the other one is going to be tax liens. Together, those are both individual pain points, separately, they're both individual pain points. Together, that's now a stacked list where you now have a potential prospect that is experiencing more pain than usual. And that means they have a higher chance of motivation to be wanting to sell. Okay. But that's what, again, we were talking about stacked lists. Hourglass and Virtual Squad, they work very well with training their VAs to work with REI Sift. And REI Sift is a CRM platform that helps you stack your lists. Is it necessary? No. Is it a more advanced topic, a way to run your CRM? Yes. Do you need it? No. Is it a way to make your leads work a little bit better for you? Yes. Okay. But with the turnkey system, this is what this all provides. Remember, a system manager, a CSM, and culture. Systems manager is obvious. They're going to be handling your campaigns. They're going to be handling your skip tracing. They're going to be handling your uploads, your list management, all that kind of stuff. They're going to be able to track your KPIs. How are your VAs doing? Are they getting leads from cold calling? Are they getting leads from SMS? That's the way you keep your finger on the pulse, so to speak, when it comes to how your VAs are performing. CSM, this is a customer satisfaction manager. This is your in-between. This is your go-to. This is the person that's going to be able to communicate with you and communicate with the VAs and make sure that you understand the way they work and they understand the way you work. And they're the in-between of the both businesses coming together and creating one symbiotic relationship. Finally, the culture. A lot of people say you should have a daily huddle with your VAs. I disagree with that. I think that you as an entrepreneur, as you as a business owner, that is something you should focus on in the beginning. Okay. That is something that you should wear that hat early on, because then you get to know your VAs better. You get to grow with them and you get to help them by role playing and stuff like that. But eventually you need to move away from that position. You need to stop having daily meetings and make it more of a weekly meeting. And then that's where, again, going back to scaling, your lead manager is going to be doing those daily meetings, and they're going to be an extension of your arm into your systems that you need built out. And so, with touching on that real quick, one thing that REI SIFT preaches, and everyone should probably do this, is the way that you manage your lists. Okay, so you see, I have ringless voicemail, SMS campaign, and cold calling here. We could also talk about direct mail, and we'll talk about that for just a second. But when you are marketing out to sellers, okay, when you're marketing out to prospects, you need to figure out what is the most cost-effective, most efficient way of doing that. And if you don't know this, you're wasting money. You're literally burning money every marketing campaign that you do. So let's say I have 100 prospects. And remember, by the way, guys, when we're talking about prospects, we are talking about someone that you have not spoken to yet. They are not a lead. They are nothing more than a phone number attached to an address, right? We all know that. Okay. So when you are contacting these prospects, what is the cheapest way to contact a prospect? Ringless voicemail, right? And if you guys don't know ringless voicemail, there's a company called Sly Broadcasting, SLY, that does this. And this is basically you record a message and it sends out thousands of recorded messages in one little hit, and it goes out to a bunch of people's phones. Now, this is a very cheap way to market. And let's say out of those 100 people, you send out a ringless voicemail and 10 people respond. 5 of them are saying, I'm interested in selling. 5 of them say, F off, I don't want to talk to you. So now that's great, because now you've got 90 people that did not respond. What is the next cheapest route? SMS, texting. That's the next cheapest way to be in contact with a seller. So you take those 90, now you do SMS with them. And now let's say the same thing applies and you get 20 responses, okay? 10 being I'm interested in selling, 10 being stop, leave me alone, wrong number, whatever it may be, okay? So now you're gone from 90 down to 70. Now you're cold calling. And now you get a lot of answers because you recycle this list, by the way. So you get more answers from that. So out of that 70, you have maybe 50 that answer and respond. And now you've got those leads in your pipeline. And then you've got 20 people that are left over. Those 20 people, they deserve the most expensive form of marketing, which is going to be direct mail. And that gives you the chance to be able to hit them and spend the least amount of money possible. Versus if I were to do direct mail on all 100, how many would respond? Probably 1, if not 2. I think 2% is the average response rate for a direct mail, depending on the market you're in. I'll be honest, I sent out a direct mail campaign of 3,500 here in Salt Lake last time, and I got 0 response. So again, it depends on the market you're in. If you're in a very hot market, direct mail is not going to be as effective. So if I want to be effective with my budget, I need to make sure that I'm spending the most money in the least amount of volume. Okay. And so moving away from that, again, this is where your systems manager handles that. This is where they can recycle this. They can let you know how those lists are performing and move you on from there. Again, the reason I talk about the turnkey system, you need to replace yourself, right? You don't want to be doing this. Okay. So moving into the next portion right here. And again, if you are on the fence or you don't have a VA yet, make an appointment with every single company here. Prime VAs, Hourglass, Start Virtual, and Virtual Squad. They're all really strong companies. I know some people use Prime VAs, some people use Start Virtual, and everyone is really happy with them. But again, make an appointment, do your interviews, and see which one fits best for your company and the way you guys want to grow. Now, as I mentioned, the micro and the macro, this skips a step. Okay. So it's not about lead generation. It's about the follow-up and the touch. Okay. When you get a lead from your VAs, that goes directly into your CRM. And for those that don't know what a CRM is, it's a customer relationship management software. It can be literally a manila folder. It can be a piece of paper. It can be a Post-it note. It doesn't have to be anything special. I use Podio. I pay $24 a month and my system rocks. I love my system. I don't need FreedomSoft. I don't need Salesforce. I don't need things that are hundreds of dollars per month to attain what I'm trying to attain, which is nothing more than a calendar that tracks when I should call somebody back. That's all a CRM is. Okay. And so depending on how you want to scale, that's what you have to first figure out. So again, I built my CRM very early on. For you guys, you can build it down the road as you grow. Most people do that. They build out a CRM when they're a little bit overwhelmed. They have to play catch up, but eventually they know what their pace is going to look like and they grow it from there. But with micro and macro, that skips the lead, the follow-up aspect. It doesn't go into your CRM. This becomes a phone call. And the most important way to get these leads to become hot, they're hot. When they go in through Google PPC, SEO, or bandit signs, and they're calling that phone number or they're filling out a web form, these people are hot to sell. They're spending the time and the energy to do that. And you need to be aware of that and be ready to answer the phone. So if you can get 100% answer rate where you respond right away, that, by the way, is how you're going to make all of your deals happen as fast as possible. But again, once they hit your CRM, you need to focus on the follow-up. So when I say the follow-up and the touch is very important for these different types of marketing methods, but the follow-up is one of the hardest things to scale. And I want to go into that and just into more depth right now. This is what everyone freaks out about. This is what I freaked out about. Like, I'm assuming that probably 90% of the people in this chat right now are trying to figure out how to train a lead manager, how to get a lead manager to take over the position, how to not, how you are not going to call sellers anymore and how you're going to scale past that point. And that's where I was hung up the hardest for sure. In sub 2, Pace preaches about VAs being the lead manager. Versus, Americans can steal from you. Americans, it's the open door policy where that you train them and then they leave and stuff like that. There's a pro and a con to both sides. And I'm going to go into that and I'm going to kind of throw you a gold nugget that a lot of people don't realize and they don't see this. And I'm going to hopefully reveal the curtain for a second here and help you guys understand that whether you do the VA route or the American route, neither of them are the wrong route. It's up to you and how you want to design your business. And you'll see this star right here I have. I call this a measuring device. Your lead managers are your thermostat, okay? They are able to tell you what the temperature of your business looks like. If they are underwhelmed, guess what you do? You hire more VAs or you do more marketing, where then you get them to a point of symbiosis, right? Just like a state of existence that they feel comfortable answering their calls, follow-ups, and they don't get overwhelmed. You want to keep them in their comfort zone, right? In their Goldilocks, so to speak. So if they're overwhelmed, guess what you do? You bring on a new lead manager, or you slow down your marketing. But if your lead managers are overwhelmed, I wouldn't slow down marketing. Obviously, we're talking about scaling. So I would bring on another lead manager. Now, let's talk about the Sandler submarine. Okay, for those of you that have read the book, You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bicycle in a Seminar. I think it's called. Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar. That's what it's called. David Sandler basically wrote the book on sales training. Okay, and with that, it goes into all these yellow portions are portions of your contact that you need to make with the seller. And they are sections of that conversation that need to take place for that deal to go through. Okay. So first off, we got bonding and rapport. Okay. A VA and an American are very well equipped to create rapport, whether it be that they just know your business's name and they grow from there, or whether it be learning about their granddaughter or their rose bush or something like that. That rapport can be built either way from either person. That's a possibility right there. Now, granted, some VAs are very scared to leave script, but regardless, just the rapport can be built. The upfront contract, that can be a script. Okay. So remember, rapport, we touched that for 1 minute with that seller. The upfront contract, guys, if you guys are not aware, this is probably one of the most important portions of your conversation with a seller, because this is what sets you up for them to understand that you guys are not flirting. You are serious about making this marriage work, right? So you are going to be talking to that seller and saying, hey, from this point, we're going to talk about your property. We're going to ask some questions. We're going to talk numbers. And if we can find the right number that we meet in the middle with, we're going to move to giving you, a contract, and we're going to sell your home. Is that what you want today? If they don't want that today, then you call back. That's again where the lead manager comes from. You call back until they're ready, right? They can even get into a VA can get into the pain. And again, that is being able to train your VA to look at the motivation, the 4 pillars, so to speak, right? Where you know that if you see a lead that comes in that says, well, if the price is right, I'll sell anything. That's not a lead, guys. Let's be very, very clear on that. We want to have motivation in some shape or form. And with creative finance, price is not important, but timeline, distress, and condition of the property, those are the most important ones. Timeline being number one. If they want to sell within 30 days, that's a hot lead regardless. But once we hit the pain portion, this is where a VA begins to falter. Highly functional companies that hire VAs to become lead managers, the way that you reach success with that, and this is the gold nugget, guys, you have somebody behind the scenes that is a full-time underwriter, so that this VA is nothing more than a puppet. Follow me on that one? So this is where the trick comes into play. And I found out that there's some companies out there that have American underwriters that literally their job is full-time is to give offers, and they go back to their VAs and they tell their VAs what number to give to the seller. That's it. You don't think about that when you think about having a VA being the lead manager. That never really comes into your mind, does it? But once you realize that that's the secret ingredient to have a VA be your lead manager, that means now you have to build out an additional system in your company. And that means you have to have somebody that is good at underwriting, whether it be an American or whether it be a VA. You have to dedicate that time for them to understand those neighborhoods, to understand those cities, to understand the markets, the ARVs, the rehab values, and all that kind of stuff. And so, but with that being said, if you had that person in place, you can then just buy lead managers left and right. There's a highly functional investor out there by the name of Sean Terry. Some of you may know who he is, some of you may not, but Sean Terry has an amazing, and I love this marketing plan. He does PPC across the nation, and his VAs have one formula. Whenever someone is interested in selling, they come in at 45% of Zillow's estimate, and they go no higher than 53% of Zillow's estimate. How easy is that? Where by Sean Terry's system, he eliminated that additional support and had them just literally go to Zillow. Like, how easy is that? 45% to 53%. Now, again, he's also spending thousands of dollars with marketing. Okay. And he's doing it across the nation and stuff like that. So that's a point of scalability. If you can get there, his additional support is Zillow, is Redfin, is Realtor, right? But again, that is what you have to think about with a lead manager. Now, let's talk about Americans. Americans, you've got the rapport, you've got the upfront contract, you've got the pain, you've got the budget because they can do the underwriting, they can figure out the ARVs, they can figure out the rehab, but then it moves into the decision, okay? And this is where you have an acquisition manager. Remember, you do not have a lead manager VA being an acquisition manager unless they have that additional support, okay? When the decision is ready to be made between the seller and the buyer, this is where your American has been there since day one. They've created a relationship, they have a friendship, and they can grow out from there. You've got your decision, and then finally, you've got your fulfillment. And the reason I put the fulfillment right here in the in-between between the transactions and the acquisition manager is the acquisition manager never goes away until this deal is actually closed or until you find a buyer, depending on how you want to market it, okay? So I don't think we have to go into this any further in terms of the close. This is, you get the deal, you figure out the pain, you figure out the budget, you give them an offer after you underwrite it. They say yes, they say no, they sign the agreement. Here's where the fulfillment comes into play. I've got a giant stop here, okay? And this is why I want you to figure out where you're going to go from here, all right? I'll tell you something that my company does, and because, again, my company grew helping other companies do this, you need to decide that when the transaction begins, that is when the ticking time bomb also begins. You can spend 6 months talking to a seller and getting that property under contract, but once that property is under contract, how long do you have? 30 days? 10 days inspection period? That's when the time bomb literally starts counting down, and you have to figure out, what are you going to do from here? And again, we're talking about scaling, guys. If you have somebody that can do your dispositions, great. You already understand what scaling looks like. But chances are, a lot of you that are here that have not gotten to this point, or maybe are close to your first deal or something like that, you probably don't have a dedicated disposition manager. And I can tell you firsthand, when you get a deal under contract, the hardest part of this entire thing is the disposition. It is talking to buyers. Pace has a saying, buyers are liars, sellers are worse. My saying is buyers are liars. They're also bitches. And buyers are so needy. They demand all of your time. They expect that they are the only person that you are speaking to and the only person that you are dealing with. A buyer will take up 70% of your time on a weekly basis until that deal closes. And I'm telling you that from experience. That is how every buyer is. So just so you understand, we have a transaction coordinator. She's also the beautiful person that did the Halloween decorations behind us. I know it's September, but she's a very big Halloween-y person. So there you go. She's the transaction coordinator here. So that allows my acquisition managers. And by the way, guys, I totally failed to mention this. We have 4 acquisition managers and we have 3 disposition managers and we have 1 transaction coordinator. And we also have a JV liaison that is someone who's helps us help other students close deals. So that is something that, not a lot of you have experienced, but the ones that have, I hope we provided you a really great service with helping you close deals. And again, that comes into filling your pipeline, filling your seats on this conveyor belt is where are you and where do your skills exist? If you are not good at closing deals, work with someone who is. Have someone else do that close. If you want to focus on the follow-up, have someone do the close. If you're good at closing, but you don't want to spend the time with the disposition, pass it off to somebody who does, right? So that, shameless plug right now, if you need help with JVing, we've got jvwithjd.com. And then if you need help finding buyers for a deal, we've got Dispo with JD. So Dispo with Jeremy Davis, JV with Jeremy Davis, however you want to look at it. We like helping out other students and getting them to the point of scaling their business and closing deals. So that being said, we're back to the transaction coordinator, right? So when you do transactions, there's a person named Rochelle Jarvis who does constant close. She is the, I guess you could say the transaction coordinator for Sub 2. She also works outside of Sub 2, but that's someone that you should always keep in mind that beauty of a transaction coordinator, guys, don't be afraid to use them. I'll plug Rochelle every day, all day, because guess what she does? She puts her fee onto the back end of the buyer's HUD and you don't pay for her. Some of you may know that, some of you may not know that, but that's the same thing that we do with our transaction coordinator, right? So same thing, we put her fee onto our buyer's fee. So when we find a buyer, guess what? Buyer pays all fees and closing costs. They're paying for our transaction coordinator to where we're not getting cut out of that, not taking a chunk out of that deal and paying our transaction coordinator. They're doing it for us. It's a beautiful system and I love it. So again, Rochelle Jarvis with Constant Close. I want to pump her up right now. If you also want help, again, Katie, my wife, she does our transactions as well. We'd be happy to help you do the same exact thing. It's just a matter of understanding your contracts. When I said that lead management was my scariest thing, how to finalize that, transaction was also a scary thing. Not knowing if I'm filling out the contracts right, not knowing if this is the correct contract, not knowing, X, Y, and Z. Being able to have somebody that specializes in transactions, it's really nice to have that. So I really want to just say right now, guys, try to have a transaction coordinator do this process for you. Regardless of who it is, this is a very helpful process, right? And then again, you're taking that hat off and you're putting someone that specializes in that seat. Finally, Dispo, guys. Again, Dispo, the minute that contract is signed is the minute that time bomb starts ticking down. And you've got 10 days for inspection. You've got 30 days for close. You got to find a buyer and you got to do that right. And again, this goes out to the microclimates, the meso markets, and the macro markets, right? Same thing. You can go on Facebook Marketplace and you can make a post for a specific neighborhood. You can go onto meso markets and you can go onto PropStream. And thank you, Chris. You can go onto PropStream and you can pull buyers in a city. Right? You can find cash buyers all over, or you can even do macro markets. This is where we specialize in. We have a lot of hedge funds and a lot of institutional buyers. Our disposition manager works in the financial sector. So this helps us where we have multiple buyers across multiple cities, across multiple states. And this allows us we start at macro, then we move to meso, and then we move to micro. And that's how we get our deals dispoed effectively. And so again, guys, where you're at right now, if you get a deal under contract, don't be afraid to JV with somebody for the dispo portion until you have the money and you have the leads in your pipeline to provide for a dispo manager, for an acquisition manager, for a lead manager, and for your VAs and transaction coordinator. Like that's what you have to get to the point of. If you can get to enough leads in your pipeline to fill and feed each of these individuals, that's how you're going to keep them. And it doesn't matter if they're a VA or if they're an American. If they're hungry and you keep them fed, they're not going to stray. They're not going to go elsewhere. They're going to be very, very loyal, and they're going to want to stay with you because they see their growth and their scalability as well, where they may make $1,000 in the first month, and then they're making $35,000 a month just for talking to a seller as a lead manager. So yeah, guys, that finally brings me to bookkeeping. Okay. Bookkeeping is something you definitely will need to outsource unless you want to do it yourself. Bookkeeping, the reason I have this blank is I have another little picture here I want to go into, but with bookkeeping, this lets you finally figure out your KPIs. It helps you figure out where your business is, and it brings you all the way back here where if you're at micro and you start scaling out, you can then go meso. And then from there, you can go macro. And this is the whole portion here, guys. You might start here with bandit signs or driving for dollars, but your goal is to eventually be doing across the nation, growing outwards, or just for sake, just dominating a city and just owning that city. You know, Utah house buyers out here, they've wrapped all the city buses, right, with their entire logo. Like that's a lot of money. That's like around $10,000 per bus. And that's pretty expensive, but they're dominating their city market. So we want to get to a point of dominating in some shape or form. And that, again, from bookkeeping, going back to there is what your whole goal is. And you repeat this cycle. And once you scale out this portion, you scale out this portion and this one, and you continue to grow. And finally, I just want to show you guys real quickly the corporate structure that we have in place right now. Obviously, I have the LLCs hidden right now, but just so you understand, guys, this is the point you want to get to. If you're not here yet, don't be overwhelmed, but you want to be able to have this system set up. So here, right here on the top level are your living trusts. This is not important right now in the beginning stages at all. This is once you retire. Sorry, not once you retire, once you die. My bad. This is your living trust. This is so you don't have to have a will. Your properties don't have to go through probate. You have your top level here. Finally, you have your holding companies. This is your private vault, right? This is your personal. Now, these three purple ones or three blue, whatever you call these things, these are my two other partners, right? So these are our holding LLCs. Down below that, you have your partnership LLC. Down below that, you have your active and your passive LLCs. And then down below that, you have everything else. You've got your fix and flip. You've got your wholesale. You've got your Airbnb. You've got your rentals. And then down below that, you've got your LLCs that hold your specific state rental. So if I have a bunch of properties in Ohio, I'm going to have an Ohio LLC that's going to have an umbrella policy over it for insurance. And guys, back to what I'm saying, this is what your eventual goal is going to get to. And this is where we're at right now.